this, I would just like to say, Creators Coalition AI, CCAI, is an organization that, at least in Hollywood, is trying to do something about it. They have a long list of signers to sort of make sure that AI is used responsibly. So that the human touch of a film still exists. Thank you, Marquita, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Actually, I wanted also to thank Anna for being here and for telling us her perspective. I think that's very valuable. I wondered on the point of AI and labor, at least in law, one of the fears we have is that AI will start replacing sort of the entry level types of work. So we were talking about the extras in a scene. Often those might be young people who aspire to be filmmakers, for whom that experience is extremely valuable. Some of them are willing to show up for free just to get that experience. You were talking about, the problem with editing if you don't have a scene with the person saying the sentence. But isn't that what really prompts the creativity, the scarcity of things, and the fact that you have to think about, okay, let's do it. Let's be creative. So I wonder, aren't you afraid about the new generation of filmmakers and their access to the experiences that the sort of low-level, entry-level types of work might offer?
I'll just say I am. I don't know about everybody else. I'm curious to hear everybody else's perspective on it. I remember in our pre-discussion, Marquita actually mentioned scarcity, and I found it. I think it's really true. Like, there is something to be said for scarcity, for having to be creative. Jim, can you move to the next slide, actually? Which is something sort of in the realm of what Marquita was talking about in her article as well, is the loss of sort of critical thinking skills and human intelligence. And how do we address that? Because if you don't, scarcity means that I have to figure out a way to make these things work. And if I'm not, if it's just all done for me, or if I'm prompting, if I'm not getting pushback, if I'm not struggling, then how do we prevent that? And I think, and I'll sort of go to the audience with this in a minute as well, but Marquita, you had, next slide, Jim, in the article, you also mentioned the idea of the law addressing ways to prevent people, I'll just put this in very layman's terms, from getting dumber, from not great. I mean, one of the things that I'm hoping actually happens for all of us as we continue to engage about AI is that we continue to think. So you had mentioned possibilities of the law mitigating those damages. How can you?
Well, we like to think that the law can solve it all, and obviously it cannot. But this is a huge problem because we see this in young people, we see it in our students at the law school, but we also see it with creative people, unfortunately, that they are outsourcing some of the processes, some of the thinking, and it is to the detriment of their development and of their development of their skills. So from education, training to, of course, disclosures and other possible tools that we might find in law. But I think it will be very much up to the ethics of the particular field and best practices of the industry. And I remember in our pre-talk discussion, we talked about best practices and how important it is for all industries and, of course, particularly creative industry in this regard, to come up with best practices and really show the way forward in their particular field. Don't leave it to the large tech companies to do this. Jennifer, you talked about democratization, for example. The tools are not equal. Some of you talked about paying for the tool in different degrees, different ways you can pay more and get more. The less you pay, the more the AI company will want from you. And often they will take the content to continue training their AI. So one of you mentioned hacking. That's, of course, always a possibility. But in addition to that, many creators give up their rates or give up the training value of their content because they have to, because they don't have the resources to pay for more expensive tools that would not use their content to train their AI.
I think that's a really good point. There's sort of the general idea of nothing's free, right? I mean, if somebody is giving you something for free, I remember when Google first came out, I was like, how do they exist and everything is free? Well, of course, they don't, how are they monetizing this? That's my question. And then, of course, it's like, well, our data now is the most valuable thing out there. I would be curious, does anybody in the audience have any experience in it? But you have a question? Well, I just want to know if anybody else has any, because I actually do, having worked in the entertainment industry, and I know I was in a union meeting the other day talking to a group, and it's not like AI has gotten rid of post production, obviously, right? But a production where they had 3 assistant editors working, they cut it down to 1 for the last month of the job, because it's like one person with AI can do all the work that's necessary. So it's not that it's getting rid of work in my mind, it's just obviously diminishing the number of people that are required. Does anybody else sort of have that kind of experience, or the opposite, something like Barry, that they would like to share, either online or